Hey everyone, it's Michelle Caruana from Play Cafe Academy. And first, before we get started, I want to just apologize for two things. Number one, we are in New York, obviously, and we are in the middle of like a huge windstorm. But I didn't want to put off recording this video because I already missed a week, which I'll talk about in a second. But I apologize if you guys hear some like really loud winds. It's really, really windy outside, and I'm sitting directly next to a window. Second thing that I wanted to apologize for is I am sorry that I haven't been as present online as I normally am, as everybody else is figuring out, life adjusting to a new normal with the COVID-19 crisis. We're doing the same over here. We are trying to figure out how to homeschool our kids, how to get the essentials safely, and I've been helping much more hands-on inside of my Playmaker Society group coaching program, just because, everyone has bills to pay, everyone has questions, everyone is pivoting, everyone is, creating new revenue streams and things like that. So I haven't been as available on like my Facebook, my Instagram, my YouTube channel. I missed putting a video out last week for the first time in like a year. But it's because I've been putting together so many trainings and new material and new lessons and doing a lot of coaching calls in there. I'm doing a business plan workshop next week on April 23rd. So if you guys are interested, I'm going to link to that below. I completely slashed the price like 80% or something. So if you guys are interested in completing your business plan this month, that is a cannot miss workshop. And it's free if you already have my business plan. If you don't, it's free if you purchase the $27 business plan. So it's the cheapest I've ever done it. But again, I've just been really, really working hard to get some new educational information out there related to this crisis so that we can all adapt and all continue to grow and launch our businesses. And if you guys want to see my thoughts on the indoor playground industry and the changes that it's going to face and things like that, I put out a video 2 weeks ago. I'll also link to that in the description. In case you guys have any questions about how I think that the industry is going to be impacted. But anyway, since I've been doing so much of that, and again, don't forget to subscribe to my channel because I have a lot of educational videos coming out soon. But I wanted to kind of take a break from all of that because I don't know about you, but I have been completely inundated in the last couple of weeks with resources, trainings, all that kind of stuff. And I just kind of want to put a pause on it. And I wanted to do a fun, different kind of video. One that I haven't really done this style before. But I just wanted to provide, of course you're going to learn some lessons and mistakes of mine that you can learn from. But I really just wanted to provide an entertaining, laugh with me video because there have been some things that happened at Climbing Vines at our indoor playground that honestly, it was painful for me to think of some of these memories. I had to dig up like some of the stuff I'm going to talk about, and it was very hard for me to read because some of the stuff, I can laugh about it now, but at the time when all of these things happened, I shed so many tears. It was awful. The police were called multiple times. So today I'm going to tell you about the 4 worst things that have ever happened at our indoor playground. And this is not to scare anybody because again, we obviously worked them all out, but it was very difficult at the time and hopefully you can learn from my mistakes. And then next week, we're going to jump back right into the educational content. And this is the second story time I've done. The first one was about our absolute worst customer ever. And I'm going to do another story time about our worst birthday party customer ever. So not open play, just birthday party customer. Again, so you can learn from my mistake, not to throw anyone under the bus. I'm not going to, divulge any personal information, but just so you guys can be prepared about some of the people that you're going to encounter, some of the situations, just so that you can be prepared and again, hopefully learn from some of my mistakes. And again, it was really hard to limit it to 4, but if I would have made it any more than 4, some of these stories are crazy, so it would have been like a 2-hour-long video. But if you guys are interested in any other stories, let me know, comment if you like this type of video kind of thrown in there. I'd be happy to do more. I have so many stories to talk about. But okay, the first one, I just want to preface this with a little trigger warning. Because it talks about guns and gun violence, and nobody was shot or anything like that, but some people are uncomfortable talking about guns or firearms or anything like that. So I did just want to say, this does talk about guns. So trigger warning, you can fast forward to the next one if that is something that offends you. So this was our first year in business. And I remember that specifically because, obviously I looked up the dates and the police records and things like that. But I was also extremely pregnant with my second child. So my first child was just over a year old. I was very pregnant with my second child. And it was a late summer day. It was in August. So we're very typically slow for open play in August, thank goodness. Our original manager, whose name was Kayla, was actually the person on shift that day. And my 1-year-old was napping. So this story started in the morning. And what happened was, like I did pretty much every morning that first year, I would stop in, have some coffee, check in with Kayla, see if she needed anything, see if there were any groceries or, anything that was needed. And I noticed I walked by the other person's car, and there was 2 people on staff that day. I don't really remember the circumstances or why, but there were 2 people there that day. And I noticed in the back of her car, there was like a rifle. And I was like, I don't remember her saying that she was a hunter. I don't understand why it's like, I, respect people's right to bear arms and things like that. But the way that it was displayed in the car, I wish I had a picture of it, but I didn't take a picture. It was so prominently displayed that anybody who was walking into the facility would be able to see it. So I was just a little bit uncomfortable. So I approached the person whose car it was. It wasn't Kayla, it was the other person that was working, who I'm not going to say her name. But I said, hey, just curious, like, you have a rifle in your above your back seat, first of all, is it registered to you? Second of all, would you mind putting it in your trunk? Because it's clearly not like a personal protection weapon. It was like a full hunting rifle. And she was like, yeah, sure, no problem. She went and put it in her trunk. I left, everything was fine. I just asked her not to, either bring it again or keep it in her car in a locked trunk or something like that, so that every customer walking by wouldn't see it. Because it's literally the first thing I saw. You could not miss it if you were going into the facility. So later that day, I put my son down for a nap, and I get a text from Kayla, and she's like kind of panicking. And I was like, this is, weird. Usually, Kayla's able to handle whatever situation arises. So she was like panicking. She was like, you need to call me. So I called her, and this was when the other girl was on her break. And Kayla basically said, she left her purse out. I noticed that there was a handgun in it. She mentioned that she had a handgun with her. And it was literally out in the open. Anyone could have touched it. Anyone could have grabbed it. It was completely unsafe. And New York, with the gun laws, I was pretty certain that there was absolutely no way that this was a legally carried handgun because of her age, because of, our gun laws, things like that. So I'm not going to get into the details, but I felt pretty comfortable that even if it was licensed and being properly carried, I needed to have a conversation with her, because literally kids could have just ran up and took it. So, because her bag was literally open. So I called our non-emergency police number, and I said, hey, I'm a business owner. I'm not really sure what to do. Like, this is a situation. It's not an emergency, but can you just like check if this is registered, or, does this sound legitimate? Should I be concerned? And at this point, I'm already kind of like getting myself together if I have to go. My husband was out of town. My first one was napping, and I was super pregnant. So I'm like, crap, I'm going to have to like get up and go there maybe. So the cop is like, oh no, like definitely not. Like I don't know if he ran her information and I don't know what exactly alarmed him, but he was like, we will be there in 5 minutes. I need you to be there in 5 minutes. So I'm like, great. So I like whisk my son out of his crib. He doesn't even have clothes on because it's like August. It's like 90 degrees. So I just put him in his car seat in like a diaper, no clothes, because I live like a little bit more than 5 minutes away. So, we were already pushing it, and I didn't want the cops to go in and like arrest her in the middle of the day with a bunch of customers around. So I get there, and they basically tell me, okay, you need to get her outside, and you need to fire her on the spot in front of us with my child who's like basically naked. And then we're going to search her and, hopefully make an arrest. And I was like, great, awesome. So, and this person was, I knew she had some mental health issues, which, you know, doesn't disqualify somebody from employment. Her, you know, record was clean, her background check came back clean, but I do know that she struggles a lot with mental health. So I was a little bit concerned. So they had me bring her outside. I, you know, told her what it was about. She said, you know, I'm not really surprised. She handed over the gun. They made an arrest. But again, unfortunately, we just couldn't really avoid it. It was in front of so many people. And it just was one of those things that, you know, at the time I was so panicked. I was crying. It was a very difficult to deal with situation, but that is, again, one of the mistakes that I hope you guys learn is, you know, depending on your state's gun laws, make sure you have a policy. It seems ridiculous that you would need to have like a firearm policy, but if you are in a state where people can be licensed to carry, you know, concealed weapons, that is something that you need to ask your lawyer about, something that you might need to ask your local police department about, because it happened to us and I really wasn't sure what to do. It turns out I did the right thing by calling the police, but I, you know, really had no way of knowing what the right situation is. And in that moment, like, it seems like, you know, oh, duh, you know, you need to get that gun out of there. But I mean, how to go about it delicately without anyone getting hurt. It was a very nerve-wracking situation. So just, you know, think through how you would handle it. Make sure you have your non-emergency police number close by so that you're able to make that call. Because I didn't know what to do, and it took me, you know, much longer than it should have to make a decision and for anyone to get there. So make sure that you're able to do that. And if you have any other, you know, safe person that can go, if you're caring for small children and you don't want them in that type of situation, make sure you have a backup plan. All right, so moving on to a little bit lighter of a story, and then we're going to get into some other pretty horrible stories. Now this was, we call this the balloon incident. And I'm going to put some pictures because I'm going to try to describe this birthday party, but there's nothing I can say that's going to make you be able to imagine how many balloons were in our facility. So prior to this, we didn't really have a policy about balloons. We said, you know, sure, you can bring balloons. You just have to like make sure that we didn't even have, this was our first year in business as well. We were open for probably 3 or 4 months when this happened. So we weren't really prepared. We didn't say, you know, the maximum amount of balloons that you could have. But I just want you to quick picture as many balloons as you can think of in a facility. And then I'm going to put the picture up. All right. So did you see the picture? I mean, that is insane. It was an insane amount of balloons. It took them over 12 hours in the parking lot to put all of those balloon arches together. It was actually insane. And we had a party right after, but there was really no policy for us to say, no, you can't do this. So basically I said, you know, oh, this is ridiculous. You can't put all these balloons in here. Like, you know, how are you going to get them out after? And they were like, oh, you know, it's a professional balloon company. They're just going to pop them. It'll be fine. And then they'll, you know, clean everything up as if nothing ever happened. Because we have a very short turnaround time between birthday parties. So I was like, fine. The guy hands me his business card. It says he's the owner of this very professional balloon company. I do a quick Google search. I read the reviews and I'm like, okay, it sounds like a pretty legitimate company. Long story short, I'm not going to get too far into the details, but basically what happened is they popped all the balloons. They popped probably, I'm going to show another picture, but they probably popped about a third of the balloons, and then they just left the other ones completely strewn about. And what the big problem was is that a lot of the balloons on the bottom of the arches, in order to keep them placed, were filled with water. So when they popped these balloons, our entire carpet was like completely drenched. And there were, I can't even, like, I'm going to show this picture again, but there was, I have to say, thousands and thousands of popped balloons. And we are a play space for babies and toddlers. That means they're crawling around everywhere. So we ended up, it was so awful. And we only had 2 people there because I was just not at all prepared. We had no idea that this professional balloon company was coming. Again, that is something that we definitely ask about now. And we have a limit to like 20 balloons. But this was something that we were just not prepared for. So we ended up having to cancel the next party just for safety reasons, because we were literally pulling balloons off of the walls, like little popped pieces. We were pulling little bits of latex out of all the dress-up clothes. We were pulling them from everywhere. It was, I can't even describe. It took us about like 6 hours to clean up this balloon mess. And so we had to cancel the next party. And the party was obviously completely devastated, but I explained the situation to them. Luckily, it was, again, late summer, so we were able to move their party to the next day. And there was, obviously, it was devastating, and I ended up giving them the party for free just because I felt so terrible. But I sent her pictures from my cell phone, and she was like, oh my gosh, like, you're right. You know, we don't want the babies to choke on these latex balloons. And plus, the carpet was completely soaked. So it was just such a horrible situation. We lost, you know, hundreds and probably all around $600, because not only did I have to give that second party for free, but we also had to pay for 2 to 3 people to clean up for hours and hours after that first party. So it was an absolute nightmare. And we did end up enforcing our excessive cleanup clause, but that really didn't even cover an eighth of the damage that was done. So we also tightened up our birthday party contract as a result of that. So basically, you know, it was too vague before. So now our birthday party contract is like ironclad, and I share our birthday party contract with all Play Cafe Academy members because it is so important. Excuse me. But yeah, it was such a nightmare. And then the thing that happened after that was even worse. So I ended up contacting the company because I was absolutely livid, and I was definitely going to make somebody, you know, pay for this. So I called the company, and they were like, we are in Syracuse, which is an hour and a half away from our location. They were like, we didn't do any parties in your area today. And I was like, that's really strange, because I sent him a picture of the business card that person had given me. And he said, you know, that person has basically been impersonating the company. So what happened was he used to be a partner of the company, but then there was some sort of like major falling out, and he is in no way authorized to provide services under that business name. So what happened is, you know, I had absolutely no retribution to that company. They had no obligation to pay me anything. I couldn't even leave a review because it wasn't even their company that did it. It was somebody that had been estranged from the company for years and years at this point. And now, as I was like tracing back the steps, I realized that he probably didn't care about how he left our facility, because he doesn't even, he's not even affiliated with that business anymore. So he felt really safe giving me that business card, thinking, you know, she's never going to be able to find me. You know, I don't even work for that company anymore. It's not like I can get fired. It's not like I can get, you know, any sort of penalty. So it was really awful. I thought about going to small claims court or something like that, or filing some sort of report, but it just, I talked to our lawyer. At the end of the day, it just wasn't worth it. So what happened, and this is the end of the story, I swear, but what happened is the man who was there that day, the one that was impersonating the owner of this company, he actually found out that I had contacted the company, and I wasn't doing it maliciously. I just wanted to understand why our facility was left in the state that it was when I was promised that it would be cleaned. And I sent him pictures, I sent everything. And so I guess this guy is in some sort of like big legal battle with that company. So, you know, by showing the company that he was impersonating them, I guess it threw like a huge wrench into their legal battle, and it made him look very, very bad. So he actually called me for days and days and days, threatening my life. And again, this is another time my husband was out of town, threatening my life. He would call the store and speak to underage teenage girls, to threaten their lives, say that he was going to come there, that he was going to show up, that he was going to teach us a lesson, all this stuff. It was absolutely horrible. And I ended up contacting the police again, because as a business owner, I didn't feel safe having, you know, anybody there completely unprotected. I wanted to just make them aware that, hey, this person has our address. He's been there before. And he's making, you know, pretty credible threats. I know exactly who he is. He has, like, you know, obviously a vendetta. So it was just one of those things where, you know, a tough decision that I had to make. But we did end up contacting the police. Okay, so the next story that I want to tell, this is the second last story, I promise. But hopefully this is a little entertaining to you guys. But this is the story that I probably took the hardest. And I'm not going to tell the entire story. I've blogged about it before, but I do want you to have the takeaways from it. So essentially what happened is we had a customer at one point that was very unhappy with some of our rules, namely that we didn't allow older children in the baby area, even if there are no babies playing, which we strictly enforce. This was another one that was at the tail end of our first year in business. So it was actually in the winter time. And I remember that because we were pretty busy, and she kept letting her 4-year-old in the baby area, regardless of if there were babies playing, if there were not babies playing. We had given her several different, warnings to, please abide by the rules. We had the rules very clearly displayed. She had signed our waiver with our policies and things like that. So, we kept having to go up, and, we finally said, we're going to have to ask you to leave if you're not able to keep your older child out of this locked baby area that you're letting them in. And she also, at the beginning of our interaction, she had a problem that we require socks. It was the middle of winter, so we don't usually get a lot of complaints about socks at that point. And there were just a bunch of other little things that she had a huge problem with. And, totally understandable, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to enforce the rules. So regardless of someone's feelings about them, we're very upfront about our rules. It's on our waiver that you have to sign before you pay. It's on our website, everywhere, all of our different policies. So I don't really have a lot of tolerance for people who just don't abide by them, or for people who have feelings about them. Because again, we do them with our customers in mind, our customers' health, safety, and satisfaction. So really, when somebody has an issue with one of these rules, we really try to lead from a place of education. So for example, when somebody says, why can't my 4-year-old play in here when there are no babies? We say, the weight limit of this toy is 15 pounds. Your 4-year-old is clearly above that. There's really no way for them to use this equipment in this area properly with their age, size, and development. So, again, it's an education standpoint. We're not saying that, we just don't allow them in there. It's just our policy. We really try to help customers understand why we have our policies. And another example is our socks. So this is the middle of winter again. It's snowing, there's salt everywhere. And, our play area carpet would be an absolute mess if we allowed people to have their salty, snowy shoes in that area. And, another mention of the fact that we're a play area for babies and young toddlers. So they're always crawling around, they're always picking stuff up with their mouths. And if you could see what our front carpets look like at the end of the day, they were completely covered in salt crystals, completely crusted with salt. So there was absolutely no way that we are going to allow people to wear their shoes inside of our play area at any time of the year, but especially in the winter. So again, we just try to explain it's for health and safety, and things like that. And this particular person wanted to have her children have bare feet, which, because we serve food and drink, we cannot allow people to not wear socks. It's just a health department code in New York, so I like to blame it on them. And I say, sorry, we could be shut down if we're in violation of this code. So basically these are just 2 examples of rules she had problems with. She really had problems with all the rules. She sat in the corner a lot on her phone, didn't mind her children, which, is fine if children are a little bit more independent, if they're, able to self-regulate and things like that. But this particular child, and I'm not sure if it was the child or if it was just because we were so busy, or if it was because just the mix of children in there, but it just wasn't working out. We were getting a lot of complaints that there was hitting, throwing, just behavior that would be easily corrected had the mother been there. So we had to keep, asking this customer to mind her children, things like that. Basically, everything that makes up, a very difficult day for our staff. But they handled it. We did end up asking her to leave. We actually refunded her just because we wanted to get her out. We basically said, maybe it's too busy, maybe your child is overwhelmed, maybe you're overwhelmed. We'd love to have you come back on a different day where, our facility might be a little bit more compatible with what you need today. So she took the refund, everything seemed fine. And then a couple hours later, she left this scathing review online. You can probably still dig it up. And I've blogged about this so many times, but I did the exact opposite of what you should do if you get a scathing review online. I basically said everything that I just said, but written down on Google for everybody to see. And yes, obviously I'm putting this information out on YouTube, but I'm not disclosing her personal information. On the review, it has her full name. This was a Facebook review, so it has her full name. People could click over to her profile, see exactly who she was. So I regret handling it that way. So not only did I list all of her faults and all of the reasons why we ended up asking her to leave and things like that, and mentioning that we did offer her a refund, which she gladly accepted, and things like that, I basically said, I basically got on the defensive because, my business is my baby. It's like my third child. And when somebody treats it in such a disrespectful manner and treats my staff the way that she did, she was yelling at them. And the fact that she just completely blew the situation out of proportion online, saying that we were, singling her out, we were being, abusive towards her. It was just insane. And I actually ended up offering, if anyone would like to see the surveillance footage, let me know. I'll make a private appointment. And what I did, I left this huge response. It was respectful, but it was definitely defensive. It definitely did nothing to, let the situation die out. It just fanned the flames. And, what I wish I would have done, and again, I've made a video like this before. I vlogged about this, so I'll link those below if you want all the juicy details. But what I wish I would have done is just said, okay, I understand you're frustrated. I'm glad that we were able to refund you so that you can come back on a better day, but can we take this into a private conversation so that we can figure out, how we can improve, how we can make sure, you don't have a situation like this, or no customers have such a negative experience again. I would have done everything I could to move the situation offline instead of having basically like a public brawl. So she reviewed us not only on Facebook, also on Yelp, also on Google. And, that could have been the end of it. Again, if I just would have, acknowledged her feelings, let her know how sorry I was, and just kind of, as a business owner, sometimes you just have to fall on your own sword, even if, that you did the right thing, even though, the customer is completely lying, it's never going to move your business forward to be defensive online. People are now still, this is 4 years later, they're still able to find that exchange. And I'm embarrassed. I have gone back and updated it a little bit, but just for integrity purposes, I've left most of it. But it was a very embarrassing exchange. I wish I wouldn't have handled it that way. So basically what happened is, because I was so defensive, because I, didn't follow my own advice, she got, I think, like 50 of her Facebook friends and family to leave very similar reviews, almost like copy and paste reviews on Google, Facebook, Yelp, everywhere. So we were completely bombarded our first year in business with like 1-star reviews. Now, luckily, her family was very colorful in their language. So most of the reviews have been removed because most of them contain profanity. So, it's very hard to get Google or Facebook to remove a review. But if it has profanity, luckily it's very easy to get it removed. So most of them have profanity, calling me the B word, calling me every name under the book, like me personally, not my business, me personally. I was getting harassed on Instagram. I was getting harassed on Facebook on my personal account. I was having people say they were going to come and find me and settle the score and things like that. It was absolutely out of control. And to this day, this is now 4 years later, I am still getting harassed by this person and all of her family and friends. So when we announced that we were switching locations, they basically had like a party about it. And they were like, I hope this BITCH basically rots in HE double hockey sticks. I hope her business fails. I hope her family suffers. It's just outrageous. And I blocked her from my personal account. I blocked all of her family. But you can't really block someone from your business page. So you can block someone from commenting on your posts and things like that, but you can't really block someone from seeing your content. So every single time I post something, she shares it on her personal profile every single time, and I post quite a bit, and asks her family and friends to leave me negative feedback, or whatever the case may be. And that's really hard. It's been very hard to deal with for the last 4 years. But the lesson that I hope you take away from this is, please don't do what I did. Please do not feed into that negative behavior never stoop to somebody's level when they're attacking you online. The best advice I can have, again, the practical advice is to move it into a private conversation as soon as possible. Then let them vent away. And, as long as you acknowledge their feelings and let them know that, you're willing to work with them, that's the best advice I can give. But in terms of like mindset, anybody that attacks a business or a person that viciously, they're going through something, right? They're hurting, someone in their family's hurting, they're feeling out of control, and they need to find a way to hurt someone else so that they can feel better about themselves. So when I get this sort of negative feedback that's not constructive, because we do get a good amount of constructive criticism, and I take that and I learn from it and I grow from it. I'm talking more about like the vicious, non-constructive criticism that's just saying profanities and calling you names and just basically saying you're a bad person and they hate you and everything you stand for, because that will happen if you put yourself out there online. So in terms of mindset, just know that, they're hurt themselves if they are reaching out and hurting you online. I promise you that. Everybody is going through something you don't know. So just instead of wishing them harm, wish healing for them, because that's really what they need. They need to feel healed. They need to feel in control. They need, resolution with whatever conflict is happening in their lives. So that's really, every time I, read this kind of feedback, I know that it's not a reflection of me or my business or what I'm doing. It's a reflection of them and their own state of mind. So that's the best advice I can give. But I was so petty. Like I can't even describe how petty I was. And I'll give you a little example, but I was so wrapped up in this. I was so fully consumed by this harassment that I let it keep me up at night. I pulled over a couple times to read reviews. I cried to my friends. I cried to my employees. I cried to my husband. It was such a dark time in my life. And I even, I'm not going to say her name, but I did buy this mug that I now drink my tea out of. I don't spill tea anymore. I just drink tea. But yeah, I bought that mug as a result. I used it for years. I haven't used it in a couple of years, but I had to pull it out for this video because it just makes me laugh. It really makes me laugh about how much I've grown as a business owner and how much I've grown as a person. And if I could go back and tell a new business owner anything, it would be, again, that whatever somebody says negatively about you, unless it's constructive, it's not a reflection of you. It's a reflection of themselves and their own mindset. So don't be petty. Don't fan the flames. Just let it go and move on. That is the best thing that you can do, because again, responding in that defensive manner is going to do nothing but cause you more headaches. All right. This is the last story, and I'm sorry this video is turning out way longer than I thought it was going to be, but this is a doozy. So this is probably the worst thing that's ever happened, and it's also the most recent. So it happened, it happened in the fall. Okay, so what happened was, it was probably like 3:50 in the afternoon. So we closed at 4. I was the only one there. I was closing. I forget what the circumstances were, but I was closing. Luckily, I was not with my children. But what happened was it was about 10 minutes to closing. There was only one customer there. It was a dad, which I'm very thankful for because he was very, very tall. But what happened was this man, I'm not sure if he was homeless or what the case may be, but it was pretty warm out still. I think it was September. He was wearing huge coats. It was clear that he was, he had very large bags on him. Definitely not with any children. I just got a very bad feeling as soon as he walked in the door, because, anytime an adult, especially with large bags, comes in without a child, I'm like, okay, red flags are going up. So he comes up to me and I, ask if I can help him. Maybe he wants coffee. I don't know. So he asks for a job application. And, I was very honest. I said, we're not really hiring right now, but we do have an online application that you're welcome to fill out. And before I could even really say anything, he just, said, I'm going to use the bathroom. So he goes into the bathroom and I'm like, oh, like our restroom is only for customers. Like, that's what I would have said. But he just kind of like started walking towards that way. He didn't really ask to use the bathroom. He just kind of walked in and shut and locked the door. So at this point, when I say that he had big bags, they were like huge bags, and it's very, attention calling to wear a lot of winter coats in the winter. So immediately I'm like, and I have terrible anxiety. Anybody that knows me knows that like an active shooter situation is my worst fear. And it's something that I'm always very prepared for. So I carry like sugar packets to coagulate blood. I always carry something to like make a tourniquet. I always have it in the back of my mind that it's in the realm of possibility because, as a business owner, you have to be prepared. So immediately that's where my mind starts going. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like this person is, going to do something. So I'm still trying to give him the benefit of the doubt at this point. But the dad is definitely like, what's going on? This person doesn't seem right at all. Are you okay? Because at this point it's now 4:00. Person's been in the bathroom for quite a long time. The dad's getting ready to go and he's like, do you want me to stay with you? And I'm like, yeah, I want to give him the benefit of the doubt. I don't want to pass judgment on anybody incorrectly. It was only us. I didn't have my kids, so I didn't feel like I was in like imminent danger, but I was still definitely panicked. So he was like, I'll stay for 10 extra minutes. As soon as he leaves, lock the door and then we'll go. So now it's 4:10 and then it's 4:15 and then it's 4:20. And so now it's been like a full half hour that this person's been in the bathroom. And during this 30 minutes, I'm calling my husband. I'm like, what do I do? And he's like, oh, it's fine. It's probably he's probably like washing up or something. Something like that. So I have the dad like knock on the door and, check if everything's okay. No answer. So I'm fearing for this person's safety because, there's absolutely no answer. We've knocked several times. So the dad actually has to leave. So now I'm going to be alone in this facility with this person locked in the bathroom. So immediately I call the police. This time I called the emergency number because I was genuinely in fear of this person's safety. I thought maybe it was an overdose or something. I had no idea what was going on, but all I knew is that I was alone and that I was terrified. So the police basically told me to hide in the kitchen, which I did. So something else that I always carry with me is something to lock a door with. So those doors that have those triangle shaped like openings so that they can open, I always carry a computer cord with me so that I can tie it around that. So if somebody tries to open the door from the outside, even if the door doesn't lock or even if they try to kick the door in, it at least gives them pause because, in any time there's like an active shooter situation, as long as you can pause them or hold them off as long as possible, that's going to improve your chances to survive by a lot. So I always bring one of those. So basically I like lock the door, I tie this thing around, and the police are like, we'll be right there. So I'm like locked in the kitchen. So at some point, they only took about 5 minutes to come. It was pretty quick. So at some point when I was locked in the kitchen, this man must have come out and left. And I think he heard me calling the cops, even though I tried to go into the other room, because by the time I got out, when the cops called me and said, okay, we're here, but we don't see anybody, I like come out of the kitchen, I unbarricade myself. Yeah, I had actually like pushed some tables up against the door as well because I was terrified. Like, again, it's something that I can laugh about now, but at the time I was sobbing. I was terrified. I was so sure that he was going to rob me or something was going to happen. And I was terrified. So the cops are there and they're like, okay, we don't see him, but I see that he's hitchhiking outside. So I'm like, that's him. At this point, he's across the street and we are on a very busy road, like a 2-lane, very, very, very busy road. And at this point, it's 5:00 almost. I would say it's probably like 4:45. So the person had been in the bathroom for about 45 minutes. And he's now hitchhiking outside. And it's about to be rush hour. So it's very, very busy. There's cars all over. So the cops are like, okay, so they leave. They pull right up next to him. And instead of, stopping and being questioned, this guy starts like running. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So he's running like full speed down the street. And we have these big windows so I can see everything. I'm like on the phone with my husband at this point. I'm like, oh my gosh, they're chasing him. Like, what's going to happen? So they end up chasing him and tackling him on the side of the road. His backpack that he's carrying ends up like exploding. And there are glass bottles everywhere, like liquor bottles, like Snapple bottles. Like, I think this person was like collecting recyclables to return maybe, but it was an excessive amount of bottles now strewn all over the street. And it was a scene. It was a big scene. And what ended up happening, and I feel so terrible about this, luckily nobody was injured, But because of the chase, because of the rubbernecking, because of all of the glass bottles everywhere, there was actually like a 6-car accident that occurred like right as soon as they got tackled. I think everybody was looking, nobody was paying attention. People were swerving to avoid everything. And so 6 cars, like I think at least 3 or 4 of them were totaled. Again, very, I think if anything, maybe a minor injury, but there's now like a huge collision, a 6-car collision. And so now the cops are like trying to detain this guy. So I run out and I start trying to help, see if anyone's hurt, seeing if anyone needs anything, helping to get the cars off of the road. And again, I'm not laughing. I'm laughing, but it's because I know that everything ends up okay. But what ended up happening was, all the cars had to go on the side of the road and wait for tow trucks. There was a couple families with small children, so I brought them out snacks and juice and things like that. But that was probably the most traumatic thing. I still think about that. I have nightmares about it all the time, going through all of the different scenarios, things that could have been in my head. I think about it all the time. I still have a lot of like traumatic memories from that day. My friend Julie took me out later that day and we had a couple of drinks, and I was just like, because she knows, about my anxiety, and she knows that's one of my like worst case scenarios. So luckily I got through it. But the takeaway that I want you to get from that particular lesson is to always have a plan. So be prepared. Luckily, we have a panic button. I didn't press it in this scenario because I really wanted to convey what was happening, because, I wasn't sure if they needed an ambulance because I thought maybe the person had overdosed. I wanted to give them all the information. So I hid in the kitchen. I made the call. I felt safe in the kitchen. Because, I was barricaded in it. So I would definitely invest in a panic button. So ours is under the counter. If, he did intend to rob me, I could have pressed that. Have a procedure with your cash. So we never have more than $100 to start the day in our cash register. And every single day we empty it out and put it in a safe. Just think about, your situation. I know there's a lot of people, a lot of play areas in like Chicago or other urban areas who actually have like a buzz-in system. So you actually have to be buzzed in, and so you ring the doorbell, and then somebody at the front desk has to buzz you in. Sometimes they require ID, sometimes not, sometimes a membership card. But this was our last year in business, so we didn't really make any big decisions based on this. But, I can just say I am so thankful that I personally was there and that my children were not with me, because it could have been a lot worse. It could have been a lot more scary. It could have been a lot more traumatizing. If it was like, a teenage girl there or a teenage boy there, they might not have known what to do as much as I would have. So again, just realize that these situations are real life. We live in a pretty small, safe town. I really never considered that as a possibility. Like, yes, I always have, a general anxiety about that type of thing, but I never really wake up and think, gee, I wonder if somebody is going to come in and lock themselves in the bathroom for an hour. I never really think about that. So definitely have all of your procedures documented, definitely have proper safety measures in place, and just think about that scenario, what you would have done, what you would do if it were you, where you would barricade yourself, what you would barricade yourself with, what you would do if there were other customers there, what you would do if you weren't there but an employee was there. So I really just wanted to bring the situation up and let you know what happened, so that, again, you can learn from my mistake. I think, it ended up happening, everything went pretty good except for the whole car accident thing. The person did end up getting arrested. But yeah, just think it through, because these things are all very true stories. I know this video was super long and I probably rambled. It was completely unscripted, but again, I wanted you guys to learn from my mistakes and just think about this stuff, while you're in isolation. This is a great time to come up with policies or plans, or, think through these things, because they do happen. They all happened to me. So I hope you guys are more prepared than I was. And I hope you guys got at least a little chuckle from this story.